Genesis chapter 7 is a critical chapter in the Bible, detailing the unfolding of the Great Flood, a pivotal event that marks both judgment and renewal in the biblical narrative. In about 2,000 words, this discussion will delve into the text, exploring the key themes, theological implications, and its place within the broader context of the Bible. Before we start, we'd like to ask for your support. If you enjoy our video, please hit the like button. This will help us reach more people and create content for you. Now let's get started with today's video. The context leading to the flood. To understand Genesis chapter 7, it is essential to briefly revisit the preceding chapter, Genesis chapter 6. Humanity had multiplied on the earth, but with this increase came great wickedness. The text describes how every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time, Genesis chapter 6 verse 5. God's grief over the corruption of his creation led him to decree the destruction of all life through a cataclysmic flood. However, in the midst of this judgment, Noah, a righteous man, found favor in God's eyes. God commanded Noah to build an ark to preserve his family and a remnant of all living creatures. Genesis chapter 7 is where the narrative of the flood unfolds in full. This chapter captures the beginning of the flood, the sealing of the ark, the rising waters, and the eventual destruction of all life outside the ark. 2. God's command to enter the ark, Genesis chapter 7 verses 1 to 5. The chapter opens with God instructing Noah to enter the ark. Then the Lord said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation." This command emphasizes Noah's unique status as the one righteous person in a corrupt world, underlining the theme of divine election and grace. God's instructions to Noah are specific. He is to take with him 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, and 7 pairs of every kind of bird. The distinction between clean and unclean animals is significant, even though the Mosaic Law, which formalizes these categories, would not be given until much later. This detail hints at an already established understanding of clean and unclean animals, possibly for sacrificial purposes, since Noah would later offer sacrifices after the flood, Genesis chapter 8 verse 20. The purpose of taking these animals aboard the ark was to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. This underscores the continuity of God's creation despite the impending judgment. While the flood would bring destruction, God's intention was also to ensure the survival and renewal of life on earth. In verse 5, we see Noah's faithful obedience. And Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. This simple statement speaks volumes about Noah's character and his unwavering trust in God. His obedience would be crucial for the preservation of life and the fulfillment of God's plan. 3. The flood begins, Genesis chapter 7 verses 6 to 12. The narrative then moves forward with the onset of the flood. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came upon the earth. This specific age, while it might seem unusual today, reflects the longer lifespans recorded in the pre-flood world according to the Bible. These lifespans serve as a reminder of the different conditions that existed in the antediluvian, pre-flood world. Noah, his family, his wife, his sons, and his sons' wives, and the animals entered the ark to escape the floodwaters. The text meticulously records that Noah took 2 of every kind of animal, both clean and unclean, and every kind of bird, according to their kinds. The repetition of this detail emphasizes the thoroughness with which Noah obeyed God's commands and the comprehensive nature of the preservation effort. Verses 10 to 12 describe the onset of the flood, and after 7 days the floodwaters came on the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, on that day all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. This dual source of water, from the springs of the deep and the floodgates of heaven, creates an image of overwhelming and inescapable deluge. The waters would rise for 40 days and 40 nights, completely covering the earth. The reference to the springs of the great deep and the floodgates of the heavens suggests a cosmic scale of destruction. The great deep likely refers to the subterranean waters believed to be beneath the earth, while the floodgates of the heavens refers to the waters above the firmament. As described in the Genesis creation account, Genesis chapter 1 verse 7. The breaking forth of these waters symbolizes a reversal of the created order, returning the earth to a state of chaos, reminiscent of the formless and empty state before creation, Genesis chapter 1 verse 2. 4. The ark's preservation and the destruction of life, Genesis chapter 7 verses 13 to 24, as the narrative progresses. Verses 13 to 16 reiterate who was aboard the ark: Noah, his family, and the animals, all according to God's command. The text emphasizes that they entered the ark as God had commanded Noah. Then the Lord shut him in. This phrase, "the Lord shut him in," signifies God's active role in sealing Noah and his family within the ark, ensuring their safety from the impending disaster. It also symbolizes God's protection and the finality of the impending judgment. Once the door was closed, there was no turning back. Verses 17 to 20 describe the increasing severity of the flood. For 40 days the flood kept coming on the earth, and as the waters increased they lifted the ark high above the earth. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth. And the ark floated on the surface of the water. They rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 15 cubits. The floodwaters not only covered the earth but rose to such an extent that even the highest mountains were submerged. Underscoring the totality of the flood's destruction, the rising waters symbolize both judgment and the purging of sin from the earth. The ark, floating on the surface of the water, represents the salvation of those who are righteous in God's eyes. The imagery of the ark being lifted high above the earth can also be seen as a symbolic elevation of the righteous, who are preserved through divine intervention. Verses 21 to 23 detail the devastating consequences of the flood. Every living thing that moved on land perished: birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all mankind. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. People and animals and the creatures that move along the ground and the birds were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. The repetition of the phrase, "every living thing," and the emphasis on the totality of destruction reinforce the magnitude of the flood's impact. The world as it was known was completely obliterated, leaving only Noah, his family, and the animals in the ark as the sole survivors. This passage serves as a sobering reminder of the consequences of sin and the seriousness of divine judgment. It also highlights the contrast between the fate of the wicked, who perished, and the righteous, who were saved. The flood can be seen as a type of baptism, a cleansing of the earth from sin, prefiguring the New Testament concept of baptism as a symbol of death to sin and rebirth in Christ. 1 Peter chapter 3 verses 20 to 21. The chapter concludes with verse 24. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. This prolonged period of inundation further underscores the severity of the judgment. The duration of the flood, lasting beyond the initial 40 days and nights of rain, emphasizes the completeness of the divine judgment. The earth was not merely covered with water, it was saturated, ensuring that nothing outside the ark could survive. 5. Theological themes in Genesis chapter 7. Genesis chapter 7 presents several key theological themes that resonate throughout the Bible. Divine judgment and mercy. The flood is a powerful demonstration of God's judgment against sin. The total destruction of all life outside the ark highlights the seriousness of sin and the holiness of God, who cannot tolerate wickedness. However, the preservation of Noah and his family also reveals God's mercy and grace. Despite the widespread corruption, God chose to save a remnant, providing a means of salvation through the ark. This dual theme of judgment and mercy is central to the biblical narrative, culminating in the redemptive work of Christ. Obedience and faith. Noah's obedience to God's commands is a central theme in Genesis chapter 7. His meticulous adherence to God's instructions reflects his deep faith and trust in God. Even when faced with an overwhelming task and an unprecedented event, Noah's faithfulness serves as a model for believers, illustrating the importance of trusting in God's plan and obeying His word. Even when it may not make sense from a human perspective, God's sovereignty. The flood narrative emphasizes God's sovereignty over creation. He controls the forces of nature, bringing forth the waters to judge the earth and preserving the ark amid the chaos. God's active role in shutting Noah and his family into the ark further underscores His control and protection over those He has chosen to save. This theme of sovereignty is a reminder that God is in control of all things, both in judgment and in salvation. Salvation and covenant. The ark serves as a symbol of salvation, prefiguring the ultimate salvation offered through Christ. Just as Noah and his family, please subscribe my YouTube channel. I hope you like this video. Thank you.